All right, folks, on the audio, you know the drill. We'll be there momentarily. All right. What's happening? This is AfterShoX. Little technical craziness going on here, so we got a little opening clip before we actually get to the body of content. As always, like and subscribe to FTIN FX Media's YouTube channel. Like the Spotify channel if you consume this audio wise. We need some likes and helps. Still plenty of summer ahead. We definitely need to get our membership up, get more people in the foxhole. You want to be part of this experience? Hit me up. I'd love to have you. As promised, we're going to have some interesting guests into the summer, late summer, into the fall. You know, there's just stuff that's it's summertime. And getting people's time, well, you know how that is. All right, folks, without further ado, let's get cracking with the show. Alrighty, welcome back to the Foxhole. AfterShoX 054, Season 2, Episode 23. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan, coming to you live from Eagle's Nest 2 Studio. Well, we're not Studio B, we're actually on the deck. Hanging out, taking the wonderful sounds of the neighborhood, nature, the kids across the way making all kinds of racket, as kids should be doing at this time of their lives. Absolutely. Yeah, we're just kind of kicking it, kind of a relaxing Wednesday afternoon before we take in a little PH, hopefully, and some other stuff tonight. So we do a segment or two out on the deck. Anyway, we always like to thank our folks that provide the wonderful gear. Well, they don't provide it, but I always give them a shout out anyways, because without it, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do. And as we always say to you, keep in mind we're always going to be under construction. Yeah, that's why we're outside. Well, it's a little bit warm today. It's not really aggressive, but, you know, enough to where we're going to come out here and sit and have the breeze and record a good chunk of this podcast. So, what do we got here? Anyway, let's get this thing going. Episode 54 coming right at you. Deep in the foxhole. Well. If you love the No Fun League, also known as the No National Football League, you know the biggest circus in all of American sports and one of the biggest globally. We're back for another round of shenanigans. Teams are in camp. We're getting all kinds of salacious stories up and down the block. It means the vans have been packed up, driven to the respective camps, and as they say, DMFK, indeedy. And of course, it being No Fun League, like clockwork, the stories that happen off the field start to occur. And unfortunately, we start off this week with a pretty wild one. EB, yeah, Eric Bieniemy. Made his name in Colorado in the college days. A heck of a coordinator with Andy Reid. A not so good coordinator in DC and some of his other spots like Westwood. But he's with the Chiefs, and they're looking forward to Patrick Mahomes returning to the field. And we find out late Sunday night, early Monday morning, that his wife was shot. Yeah, at home. A couple of times. And we're kind of wondering, like, well, that sounds pretty intense. And then we find out the next morning it was his son. Now, I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive because there's so many stories going on right now. But I'm kind of thinking, what kind of wild situation do you have to have at home where son takes a few shots at moms? I mean, is this the kind of insanity we have going? And, obviously, being a multiple Super Bowl winner as a coordinator and other stops, this happened in Loudoun County, so I'm guessing he bought this house when he was with the Commanders, although he may have deeper DC ties than I know, but I don't think so. But anyway, yeah. So he has to leave camp and, deal with his wife's recovery, which our thoughts, hopes, prayers, wishes go to her recovery. But what kind of dynamic is that going to be moving forward? I mean, obviously, there won't be a cookout for a while there. And even if there is, gee whiz, is the elephant constantly going to be in the room? And I'm not making light of this. I just think this is just one more sign of how whack our world is becoming. And there's been all sorts of things. I almost think this is kind of a reoccurring theme as far as this episode is concerned. I mean, right? Because when you think about this in terms of all the pressure this guy's been under, obviously never getting a head coaching job, which is something he desired. Some disappointments in D.C. and arguably Westwood. I think his last stint was fairly good. But nonetheless, and he's back in KC. And now you got to deal with this. Man, oh man, crazy stuff. Well, I don't want to speculate too much. We better roll up the other internet, let me say, I don't want to call him RBH. This is more about, the 411ers and the cred chasers. They'll be the ones that can break the story down a little bit more and better than I can. We got to get through other stuff. And there's another crazy story, it being the No Fun League, dominating headlines once again for things that happen off the field. And I had mentioned it, I believe, in Foxtrotting in a Foxhole. Maybe I did. It may have not been out then, but I think I did. Like episode 324. Anyhow, there's a lot of scrutiny, and a lot of it has to do with Shefty, Adam Schefter, who's been buddies with the Shanahan family for a long time, written books about Danny and Chummy, and I guess Chris Sims is involved in this. I mean, it's always crazy, and I think I mentioned this about how long it took for this story to surface. We find out it was pretty severe, broken hand, ribs, like 40 stitches in the face. But the story gets murkier. You start talking about the 21-year-old girl that he swerved into, apparently, and he was checking his phone. It's that old Sanford and Son episode. I think we have a Sanford and Son where they're talking about that cock and bull story. Yeah. And I don't know. The Shadys have got a better cleanup crew than Tiger does, because we haven't seen any pictures from this accident. No body cam footage. Yesterday's press conference with the Bay Area media, gee whiz, it was closed, no cameras. I mean, they let media in, but no cameras. And so, obviously, there is an effort to control this narrative on behalf of the Niners, and as people talked about on the web shows today, what kind of favors are the Niners going to have to do for certain jurisdictions for letting this mess fly? And of course, the internet, which does run 365, 24/7, they're not letting up with the conspiracy theories as to what may have happened, what's going on, and why is there a lack of transparency from the 49ers? Oh, we'll be talking about this. Exhibit number 3. Tony. Mr. Romo. As we said, Tony Como. I mentioned that, I believe, last week as well. We got to see, the footage, TMZ, everybody's got it. I can't stress enough when it comes to this particular nonsense. There's apps, as other people have pointed out. Why don't you hire a driver? There's a ride service. Meaning you're going to go out and play golf. You're going to go out and have a few Coronas, because obviously that's what he pitches. You're hanging out with the boys. You're hanging out in mixed company, whatever. And you like to have a few beverages like Lay's potato chips. You rarely stop at just one. So you're a high-profile person, and as I always say, why put your family, your reputation, all that stuff at risk by either being a cheapskate or just being a straight-up dumbass? Right. You have somebody, especially you have you're in the number one team for the NFL, biggest sport in this country, and you're in the number one chair along Jim Nantz. Why are you giving CBS a possible reason to tell you to go do something else? I do not get it with these fools, especially when it is so easy. And well, Ken, he went out to the range, and then they went and played 18 and hung out in the 19th hole, and we're telling stories, and we're watching the game, even though there's not really a lot of games going on right now because it's a slow time of the year. No, I don't want to hear that nonsense anymore. Be smart, especially when you have a very high visible position in the media where you are compensated well. Trust us folks who are not getting compensated well. It's kind of a slap in the face when you do dumb things like this. Am I lying? See? What else do we got here? Wow. And this is another one that's pretty crazy as far as this week is concerned. So, I talked about it a few weeks ago, the whole thing with CJ, Chris Johnson, and his uphill battle with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And so we did an interview with Michael Strahan, the one and only. And they talked about the journey that he's going to undertake as far as trying to beat this disease and have, a meaningful life, after, you get diagnosed, it's usually a death sentence. But as we know with Steve Gleason, you can prolong these things, and maybe we'll find a cure for this. The point being is the conversation was more about that. But leave it to certain people, the keyboard warriors, thugs, to make an issue, and some folks in the media to make an issue, taking Strahan to task for not really coming after the NFL and asking him, do you think Lou Gehrig's disease that he has is a result of some kind of CTE thing? And I just thought, wow. I mean, it's a heartbreaking story enough. And like many things going on right now, Nolan Wells comes to mind. People have a way of throwing kernels out there and watching them turn into enough popcorn to feed all the movie theaters in California. Okay, I am no expert on CTE, never claimed to be an expert on CTE, but what I do know, it's kind of reckless for somebody in an interview to make that kind of jump, especially it's Good Morning America. Do you really think Strahan wants to ask some really poignant questions? I think he wants to have a poignant interview to capture this man's journey. And yet you keyboard warriors, thugs, and the hustlers, you're having none of it. And there's some people that belong to the, we won't say woke sports media, but the whack sports media, who are just as guilty in this waltz. All right, let me lighten it up a little bit here. We're sitting here reading the blotter stuff. We got tragedy going on here and all kinds of negativity. Let's break away from this and let's go with one of these. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Now we talked about this. I think we talk about it all the time. Whenever somebody rolls out some new unis or some swag, we always like to talk about it when it's good, like the Rams. I mean, I still want that Raise Hell black jersey, the updated one. I mean, I like the original Commanders, but I'm like, wow. A black jersey and, as they call it, the Super Bowl style, which the old Redskin jersey. I mean, some of the stuff is like pure fire. But did you see this alternate jersey that the Bills rolled out this past week? You want to talk about some nauseating stuff on your eyes. Man, I see Josh Allen, the pride of Fireball, California, out there telling people to stop hating on those uniforms. But it's like you move into a new crib. And given, as I've talked about on the platforms, it's an uphill battle for many working class folks to be a part of that experience where it probably didn't used to be in their old stadium and certainly not in the rock pile. And then you foist upon them these hideous uniforms. This stuff is bad. I mean, if you know your history, you know, as I kind of do, AFL history that is, you know that there were some pretty bad uniforms in that era. And I'm going to tell you the slop the Bills have rolled out with, and I forget what the uni is called. I'll mention it in Foxtrot. I got Foxtrot because you know it's probably going to be up for a TMCA award when it's time. But man, this is embarrassing as far as a uniform is concerned. It's like a WTF, a WTH. Come on, man. Come on, man. Do better than that. Especially with a new crib you're opening up. I mean, it's one thing with the Bengals and this white stripe thing they're going to try to do. I think it's kind of silly, but I can digest that way more than bad uniforms. Except the Rams going back to their Dodger style ones of the 60s and 70s and the 51 Bob Waterfield, Elroy, Crazy Legs, Hirsch era. That would be nice if they could actually have a dark blue and white from that era as well. And as I said to my brother, it's time for the Cowboys to stop being soft and bring back the blues they wore in the 70s. Because remember, they had like a real bad stretch from, they lost a couple of Super Bowls, and then they got the notion that their blue jerseys, which they rarely wore, since they wore white at home, they were most of the time would wear white on the road, but teams would like to screw with them and make them wear their blues. And there was this notion that those jerseys, and you've heard me talk about this a million times, the blue ones, it was a different shade of blue with the white numbers. As much as I hate the Cowboys, those were tight uniforms. I think this blue and silver that they've adopted, they've revised it a few times. Doesn't pop like those did. And I just feel if the Rams could do it, you should do it. I don't know, man. Okay. Let's see here. I don't know where that came from, but I see what. Yeah. All right, folks. That is enough for this segment. When we come back, we'll talk a little NBA, just because we can. All right. See you in a moment. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling like Kavicha Kvaratskhelia. Hey, they're back in camp. Saw a picture of him the other day. It was all sight. But got a lot to speak to all of that stuff. I think in the next episode of Fox Trading on the Foxhole, there's some things we'll drop a little bit later in this episode as far as what's happening in pitch side. But meanwhile, what do we call this segment? Let's just call it, as they used to call it back in the late 70s and then early 80s, that NBA action was NBA fantastic. Well, the association and its sister counterpart, the W, having quite the summer. Obviously, the big story LeBron finally landing the plane in the city of brotherly love. Yeah, there's a lot to be made of that. I've seen some great content. Obviously, Scap Attack and some of his cronies, they had a bronzexual on there, and oh boy. So much to speak of, right? And it's definitely a major impact. And there's a lot of ways to look at this. As my watch is blowing up. You know, if you look at the current team, you know, especially with LeBron taking the minimum, obviously, was it going to be, what, $8 million over the next 2 years? Ring chasing. Charles Barkley basically saying if he can win 2 rings in Philadelphia, that would make him the GOAT. Then you juxtapose Los Angeles into this conversation. You know, obviously, the Lakers without him and him going and saying that he felt the Lakers wanted to move on. Laker Nation certainly wanted to move on. Obviously, with Luka being the centerpiece, a cloud hanging over Mark Walter, apparently. Need to look more into that as far as the federal probe into him. But I think the Lakers are fascinating in this point that they're an intriguing watch, but without LeBron, I'm not necessarily sure they're in a position to get better and win a ring. Pretty much it'll be almost identical without it as far as the ceiling goes. And that's not going to sit well with Laker Nation. And obviously the slings and arrows will be coming for Rob Pelinka, and obviously J.J. Redick, and Luka too. Then the Knicks, they're in this equation because Gotham, of course. I mean, for many, many years it was thought he would go to Gotham, that he was in L.A. for 8 years, which in some ways was an eternity. In some ways it went pretty fast. That you would think if you have conquered L.A., and even if you think the COVID championship is a farce, yes, he was on the top of the summit when he was in Los Angeles. Why wouldn't you want to do it to New York? And prior to this year, as we all know, it had been 5 decades, and it would have been a great story. But something happened along the way where the Knicks actually gutted their way to an amazing championship, and they could say, "Hey, thanks, but no thanks. You're not going to ring chase and bust up what we have going at the Mecca," which I think is fascinating. Because I'm sure Rich Paul, who as I probably made a pretty bad reference to last week, I'm sure he didn't really take that well. Me laughing, thinking, well, hey, New York, just sitting there like, yeah, where were you 4 or 5 years ago on your ring chase? I mean, it's just, and it's so funny because I think a chance when they got him, because of all the madness, because it is a team run by James Dolan. You know, it's almost like you want to frown that they're the pinnacle of success right now. And that's probably because Dolan was building the Spear, was involved in other projects to meddle and screw the damn thing up. But hey, they're on top of the summit right now, so it is what it is. And I think that because of all the things that are going on that led to this moment, they probably didn't pursue LeBron, and that because I'm sure they could have, if things had played differently, knowing how impulsive that guy is, they probably would have made a run at him. And they probably wouldn't be where they are right now, would be my guess. Just because nobody's winning LeBron's not winning a championship again. Maybe he clams on to this one with the Sixers and gets 2, but we'll get into that more on that in the next Fox story on the Foxhole, which I'm hoping to have out late Friday or early Saturday morning. Man, let me circle back to the Lakers though, real quick. Where do they sit now without LeBron? Is there pressure on them as far as Luka being the centerpiece? Or are they playing with house money knowing that, hey, if we don't meet expectations, this year. We're still figuring it out. And if we're successful, well, see, LeBron was holding us back. I don't know if either one of those are true. I just think the Lakers, because of the brand and who they are, it's been a hot minute. I think their fans are getting restless in terms of wanting to see them be relevant. Just saying, y'all. Okay. Now, we talked about LeBron taking the minimum, obviously. And I know NBA's and the NBA Players Association and the tug of war when it comes to players, especially when they should probably take less, or no, they better not take less, that you give them any money back. But I look at Golden State, and obviously with Steph Curry and Draymond getting very, 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 very long in the tooth. It's a one-year deal, mind you, but what is Draymond doing taking $28 million? I mean, don't you want to see if Steph can get to a fifth ring? Now, maybe you thought LeBron was coming over for nothing and the Warriors are out of options. This I don't know. But I would still think I would want to take a hell of a lot less to maybe add a couple of pieces to make one last valiant run. So you all could get that fifth ring and we can have all sorts of conversations, because it is all about the GOAT conversation, right? And the funny thing about that, it evolves over time, but I don't know. I've been on this earth a few minutes, and I will say this. I think that conversation is more stirring now than it's ever been. Strikes all kinds of emotions with the peanut galleries, the experts, the content creators, the freak shows. Yeah. This is an interesting evolution. You look at LeBron's desperate attempt to try to get the six, and maybe because it's in his early 40s, with the 24th year, I believe, coming up. But yeah, that might make some people, even some stubborn folks like myself, depending on his role in it, to maybe rethink it. I doubt it, because, I don't even put the real king, MJ, at the top. Bill Russell's always going to be number one for me, because I know my history and I know how devastating that of a competitor that guy could be, how much he could devastate you and rip your heart out. Like few that have ever will play this game. In terms of the warrior mentality, when it was winning time, as the great Irvin Magic Johnson always says, with that smile. Yeah, I love that we have all sorts of conversations, and it's good to see Kareem being elevated, because we do take for granted how great the captain was. Obviously Magic joining him in 1979, which led to 5 titles, and what did they go to, like 8, 9 finals in that decade, up against some really great teams. Obviously the Celtics with Bird, McHale, Parrish, DJ, and the crew, and then that team they lost to, with Dr. J and Moses Malone, and even losing to the Rockets with Moses Malone and the Twin Towers. So, yeah, I mean, I just think, and Kareem had a hell of a run, into his 40s. I mean, that performance he had in the 85 championship, which I think is the greatest Lakers championship ever, hands down, for obvious reasons. Yeah, and I'm glad to see Kareem really getting elevated again, because I think for the longest time, folks just, kind of took him for granted. I wouldn't say it was ever diminished, but he was definitely taken for granted, and it's really good to see that. Obviously, Kobe goes up and down, because when you're in a tug of war with the Kobe-ites versus the bronze-sexuals, right? Talking about a purge movie, let those two sides go at one another. Anyways, I just think that's really fascinating. Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little more hoops, because we got a lot to say when it comes to the NBA's favorite charity case, their sisters in the W, making all kinds of whacked out news on and off the court. We'll see you in 2 snaps and a twist. Yeah. All right, folks, we cannot stress enough. Like and subscribe to FTIN FX Media's YouTube channel. Need the engagement there whenever we can get it. Tell your friends to. I know it's a shameless grovel, but this really helps the algorithm, helps us do a lot of cool things. Want to see this content even get better? Like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tell your friends to do so. You won't regret it. All right, back to the mix. Hey, we're inside now. A whole other look. Yeah, you know that sign that we have when we don't have the backdrop. It says under construction, truly. You know, still working out some production issues. You know, acquiring this, acquiring that. You know, you hear me talk about it all the time. It's true. It is true. And we are doing some cool stuff here. Bear with us. We've been promising forever, ever since 2020, but it's actually in motion. And, you know, building a village, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. Okay, where are we going here? Yeah. So, when I started filming this episode, and I thought about this segment, because, you know, I keep saying, you know, I really want to talk about the WNBA less. Not too. Mind you, it kills me that all these people have tons and tons of views, and I know I was probably talking about that league even before they were. But hey, because I didn't get caught up into the Caitlin Clark storm, I got left behind. Not complaining. I'm just keeping it real and true here. And this past week, with their All-Star game leading into the residue from it, once again, demonstrating why this league continues to be so frigging unlikable. Wow. I mean, not wanting to wear the USA 250 patch. Every other league did. But somehow these entitled clowns, and most of them who don't come out for the national anthem, yeah, I'm calling you out for that. Look, that's what I said when I was talking with SJ. Check out the last episode of when we brought her up. And we were talking. You don't have to love America and everything that it does. But come on. I mean, a league that will allow you to play basketball professionally, a league that's not made any money, has been subsidized. Now you're enjoying the perks. Why is that? Because you live in America. So, can't you be team players? But only starts there, right? I mean, let's really get into this. The stud buds. Yeah, they're content careers. A couple of players, don't care what their names are. Doesn't matter to me. But they live streamed the whole weekend. A weekend where apparently, other than Caitlin Clark giving a damn and actually showing up to the meet and greets on time and actually being an exemplary citizen as the content creators, this was just a hump grind party and get my drag and drink on. Wow. Now, when it comes to the preferences in that league, we all know what they are. And we also know that the league has gotten very popular because of primarily two straight white girls. And with B3, if Cameron Brink would show up to the party, but she has refused to so far because of injuries, or she just may not be that good at this level. Same thing with my girl HVL. And Sabrina. Unfortunately for Sabrina, she is not somebody that the simps really drool over. She is straight, but the simps ain't drooling over her. The facts. It's all about Sophie and Caitlin. But seriously, I mean, you're live streaming at the club. Paige Buchers, who's also supposed to be a face of the league. Now, I get, like I said, when it comes to preferences, And maybe this is the idea you want to sell to America and little girls. It's a bad optic. Showing up to meet and greets a half an hour late and then staying for 10 minutes like, nah, man, I'm too hungover. I can't deal with this. Now, if y'all had been in a profitable league throughout this time, you could have this arrogance. But maybe because you have new fans, you might want to put on a big smiley face. Put away your identity politics. You've got plenty of time on the road and at home to get your party and your bump and grind on. Regardless of whether you're hetero or whatever flavor you choose. I ain't here to moralize about that, but I'm here to say, wow, this is why y'all are such an unlikable league. And I'm very impartial. Because, okay, I'm not impartial. That's hogwash. You know, I've never really been a big fan of this league for many reasons. But they've been amplified over this past week. I mean, the All-Star game is just one part of it. I mean, the Fever were in Seattle, was that 2 nights ago? And ever since Soapy, because this is all about Soapy and Caitlyn, they're on one side, and then the angry old heads and whatever flavor you choose other than what the simps are sipping on are on the other side. And neither one wants to rub each other's back. I mean, over here on the angry side of the equation, as I always said, we didn't want you here in the first place. Why you here? Yeah. We'll take that popularity so we can fly charter and have that fat bungalow in Soho, but we don't want you. Am I lying? You know, I'm not a Caitlyn Clark simp. She kind of gets on my nerves when they're whining, and her fans have really made it almost impossible for me to really like her. But I find myself more and more in her corner. Because she was exemplary during this All-Star weekend. She's risen above all the controversy surrounding her. She's told all you wackos stop using her name to weaponize whatever agenda you have. You don't give a rat's. You don't care. Oh, she's just being manipulated. I don't know whether she's being manipulated or not. I just know there's a whole lot of wackoness. This whole thing, because I got sidetracked there, with what went on in Seattle, with their owner calling out these girls, which I was just watching some content while setting this up, probably plants. They had, the XXXY t-shirts, and the owner came up there, with this mix of anti-gay, anti-trans, mixed with Jesus and the Lord and all that kind of stuff. Cursing. Problem is, owner, she got suspended, I think 5 games, fine. Basically slap on the wrist. Had it been, someone like Jerry Richardson, they'd have found the way to run you out of the league. And this may happen here, but wait. She plays for the team. She plays for that team. And I ain't taking sides here, because I have said from day one, if you go back and check the files or check the tape, however you categorize it, I said this war was coming. But yeah, basically, and somebody spat on a Caitlyn Clark fan. Now, mind you, this is Seattle, so clearly this stuff was staged. They knew you would get a certain reaction to prove one side proving, yeah, these are the scumbags, these are the toxic people. The other side, or at least like Sophie and her little army, rolling with Riley Gaines. May have to maybe start listening to Sophie's podcast to maybe see if I can read in between the lines. I think she's kind of playing the Sydney Sweeney game. I don't think she's serious about any politics. I mean, I think she does believe that biological men shouldn't be playing in women's sports. And people are rallying around it. That's how Riley Gaines became somebody. Otherwise, she's a mediocre swimmer nobody gives a you-know-what about. Yeah, I know. I'm so wild about this whole thing. Right, because I've got a freestyle out here. Because this is just nuts with this stuff that went on over the line. And it's still unfurling. Because I haven't really even had time to look into the suspension. I mean, you don't go up to pants, even if they were planted. And why do I say they were plants? Because apparently, what are these two? I don't know. They're maybe early high school, late middle school, courtside, wearing these T-shirts from this lady who is pushing the agenda because she's part of that whole Riley Gaines, Tommy Lawn, and all those folks. Whatevs, right? Wow. And an owner coming unhinged, kind of saying, no, I speak for the real folks here. I said, between that and the All-Star game, which, by the way, was a complete farce. I mean, I mentioned it in the Foxhole, but obviously I've had more time for it to marinate and distill and all that other stuff. You know, it's one thing for the exhibition we see in the NBA. The NBA is a known commodity, and we do really care when it matters when it comes to the association. We have long known the All-Star game is a complete crap fest. We've known that for too long. However, the WNBA gave us a glimpse. Remember when the All-Stars played who was left of the All-Stars played the folks that were going to the Olympics, and we had this great game. It was a great showcase for Caitlin and others. Now, they're clowning around, and they don't have the skills. I mean, right, when you see people bricking, hey, Angel Reese, you're just embarrassing yourself. I mean, Aja Wilson, she didn't care. None of them cared. Only Caitlin and maybe, Aaliyah Boston, only two, or, Kelsey Mitchell, right? They're Fever teammates. Nobody else cared. You saw Caitlin, right, the whole clip, what was she talking to, that ESPN lady? Was her name Shelly Smith or whatever? Kid went to Oregon and played softball, I think. Well, part of the scenery. But she's sitting there pleading. Come on, let's play hard. I mean, she wants some points. Because I'm a Caitlin Clark cynic. Not a hater, just kind of cynical, more about the energy around her as opposed to her, the person, and maybe folks overstating her overall impact. But hey, that's just me. I got an opinion. I got insight. That's why I do a podcast. But she really won me over this weekend when I saw the other side of the aisle, pure Babylon. You saw them in the club, not caring on the court, and then you juxtapose that with the shenanigans in Seattle. A total psych op or whatever the hell they call that. It is. The whole thing. A complete frigging setup. Everybody playing identity politics when Caitlyn just wants to hoop, and Sophie knows what she's doing. And Sophie sees an opportunity, and I think any straight girl who's somewhat attractive, I've said Sophie doesn't do that much for me. She is not a 10, folks. She just happens to be, because there's no competition when it comes to what turns the Sims on. She's blonde, has the 10, knows jujitsu, played football with the boys, so yeah. She's a 10 in a lot of these guys' minds for all those reasons. And you come out and make a statement. I don't know if you were trying to be political, you're just being sensible about something, but Congress still wanting to double down as far as the fouling goes. Knuckleheads like L. Duncan chiming in, telling Caitlin Clark, you need to step into this and make your people more accountable. How about everybody be accountable? Or better, why don't we put the mute on this friggin' league? Sit back, grab our popcorn, grab our Coronas, sorry Tony Romo, and watch these mofos implode on each other. Because at this rate, this is what exactly is going to freaking happen. And it's going to be funny to watch and kind of sad because it didn't have to be that way. But you cannot tell me after this span of the last 4 or 5 days, this league, which is spinning out of control. You're not selling the Disco Biscuits. Roller spinning. Out of control. Yeah. You can't tell me that if there are signs of Armageddon, this is it. Because this is total Babylon, right? And I'm not getting biblical or anything here. I'm just like looking around. I go, wow, if there's such thing as Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm seeing it with the WNBA this past weekend. Because I've said long ago, this league is truly a manifestation of what is wrong and whacked in our world. And I've been saying that for about 6 years now. And obviously, the arrival of Caitlyn and the ascendancy of Sophie Clark. Come on, Cameron Brink, we're waiting for you. See, the Carpenter twins, they just said, nah, man, we don't want any of that smoke. Jeez, man. I mean, there's so much to this, too. You got the whole thing with Monica McNutt. And people in media like her and Elle Duncan. And there's so much jealousy and envy. I don't want to get into the stereotypes and be a misogynist. What do they say? The proof's in the details. If you know, you really know, as we like to say. It's all disgusting. But yet, it is, Maurice of Keep Division says, good podcast, I like him, like with Ben Daniel, Rachel DeMita. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And it just, it's a train wreck where it's like, God, I really don't want to talk about it this week, but I got to. Because every passing week, they continue to outdo themselves. All right, folks. We'll be back in a moment with some parting shots and probable salty takes, if that wasn't salty enough. As always, remember, like and subscribe to FTI and FX Media's YouTube channel. Really need help? You want to be on the podcast? Sponsor it, ftinfx@gmail.com, or call the hotline, 541-525-0896. All right. Hey now. All right, we are at that point. AfterShoX, number 55, the double nickel. Yeah. Right. Fish wrapped up their 5th show last night at the Garden. I'll be talking about that in the next Fox Truck and the Foxhole. Wow, we just got all kinds of fun here as far as the device goes, but we're not freaking out about it. Okay. Where are we going here? So the NCAA. Yeah, that NCAA. On fire. Why am I the NCAA on fire? Well, we all know for one, the CSP is stalled. The SEC talking tough. We gonna break away, brother. And now we find out that this kid, I think he plays for Tennessee. His name is Arian Carter, I believe. He is going to miss, I think, 2 games. Why? Because he took a $427 flight from an agent. Money that he paid back, mind you. And this is where the problems come in for me and a lot of other people. You got these pools making money hand over fist, doing all kinds of collectives. There's likeness deals. And we're going to punish this kid for taking a flight which he paid back. This is why when you really want to have sympathy for the NCAA, you can't. When they do asinine stuff like this, what the hell are we doing finding this kid? Not finding, I mean suspending him, excuse me. Right? It's just stuff like this. Because I've been on the NCAA side in terms of, yeah, they need help with guardrails. But good grief, if you're going to still be so hypocritical, or if not hypocritical, toothless, and let this madness go down the way it has transpired, don't be taking it out on this kid. This is silly. SAF, as they say. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll call this bullet point. Let's call this Mac Brown's cocktail hour. You know Mac Brown, formerly of Texas, last of UNC. You know, was kind of let go so we could get the Bill Belichick era. Well, we find out that his henchman, Mr. Lombardi, you all know him, or if you don't know him, he's been, you know, around Bill, other organizations, around the NFL as a personality. He's a GM over there. He just got put on administrative leave. Apparently he was being a douchebag to some other staffer, but I'm sure it's much more than that. It always is, isn't it? My thing is, Mac Brown must be having one hell of a cocktail hour, sitting back, having a martini, sitting with the folks wherever he plays golf at, just sitting there laughing, knowing that the program that he made legit is basically being run by some wackadoo brunette in a fringe skirt, in her fringe boots. All kinds of chaos going on there. You know, it was a stinky job. It was a stinky diaper last year. And you get the sense it might even be worse this go around. Oh, man. And I'm going to have to dig into this next one a little bit deeper on Foxtrotting in a Foxhole. And like I said, I'll try to get that out since this is Thursday morning now. I'll try to do that tomorrow night and get it out late night. So when you wake up Saturday, it should be minty fresh. But this whole thing with all of the federations, because FIFA has this grand scheme to bring in private financing for the next World Cup. You know, basically kind of do their version of live and just say, okay, we're going to take the big bag of cash. And all the federations are just saying, hell no, we'll boycott. Now, I don't have all the facts here, so don't come at me. I still need to do a deep dive. But to me, that is the basics. The federations know that, yeah, you can do a big bag of cash, but how much influence are they going to have as far as the governing of our sport? And they don't want to give up any control either. You know, right? They're trying to get more. And now we're going to let, you know, some big money bags come in. Oh boy, this is getting interesting. Especially on the heels of what was, as many feel, a fantastic experience. Not only for us Americans, but everybody around the world. In spite of you folks drinking the haterade. But it's a rocky path moving forward. But what have I been saying for 6 years? If you can't handle the smoke coming out of the kitchen, go grab your sack lunch. Go grab your scarf. Go with your mates. And go watch some local soccer. Because the fact that big money's involved and you see some of the transfer fees that are being bandied about and the games that are being played, when folks get on their high horse, I don't know, it's hypocritical. It's not naive, because there ain't no innocent babes up in this bee. There's just not. I just think, what do they say now? What does the culture say? What do people in the culture say? This is my truth. And we're seeing a whole lot of their troops when it comes to facing the realities of big money in any sport, let alone soccer or football proper. I don't know. But we got to do a little bit more unpacking as far as that's concerned. Okay. I got to watch the MLS All-Star game last night. Interesting as it was. My man Sonny Brace takes away the MVP. Talk more about that next episode of Fox Truck in the Foxhole. But I just thought about the All-Star game. You're playing Liga MX. MLS gets the win. Happy about that. But it was on Apple. And I look at Mr. Garber once again and just go, man, can you stop? I mean, I can sit here, like in the last segment, beat up on the WNBA for shooting themselves in the foot. But that's just a clinical case of, of insanity, okay? Where the MLS, you just shoot yourself in the foot. And, the whole campaign, okay, we'll take it from here. And all I've really seen is MLS do its typical stumble. Yeah, I know there's talk about taking the restraints off the roster and salary restrictions to make it a more competitive league. But remember that scene in The Wire? I always like to quote The Wire when I think McNulty, he's either talking to Bunk or Freeman, and he just says it's not in them talking about the bosses to do the right thing. I feel that way about MLS. It's just not in them to do the right thing. Even when they're doing something, it ends up being stepping in 4-5, and we're not talking doggy. We're just as we live in Eugene. We're talking, what the street people leave on the sidewalk. And this is MLS always stepping into it as opposed to taking advantage of something and really having it lead to real growth. I mean, it's definitely a one step forward, one step backward, sometimes one step forward, maybe 3 or 4 steps backwards. Especially if you talk to some of my salty friends that like the Timbers, who are even though I sometimes have to chastise them on here about it, they're not wrong when it comes to this league and Mr. Garber. And I know my people at LAFC and all the various peanut galleries that I do intake on. And we're all saying it. Gee, we all can't be stupid, can we? Man. Okay, what do I want to leave you with here? More on this is that's an ongoing theme with me when it comes to the MLS stepping in poo. Well, let's do a little review time. So, finally gotten time to take in some content. The sports documentaries. Every now and then, I'll take a couple in at once. And I watched the Jailblazers documentary, and I'm going to agree with the one guy. What's his name? Jeff Pearlman. He's got some really good content out. I love the thing he did on Lynn Bias and, the forgotten tragedy and all of this. The Don Rogers from the Browns, UCLA before that, who died 8 days later of cocaine overdose. But part of the scenery. Don't get distracted here. The Jailblazers documentary, I agree with Pearlman. It was okay, but it really only scratched the surface. I mean, by only focusing on Bonzi, Rashid, and Damon, there was and just kind of, looking at other interesting characters. I mean, obviously they talked about, the nanny, I don't know. I don't want to use the R word, but, yeah. that Ruben Pedersen guy, the self-proclaimed Kobe stopper. Yeah, J.R. Ryder. I mean, there's a lot of interesting people. I talked about Scottie Pippen somewhat, but it just, I don't know. How would I describe that? It so scratched the surface and, sort of wanted to like paint, Trader Bob Whipsit. I don't know if they wanted to paint him in a bad light or just kind of, being, that guy, the father at the reform school that always looks the other way. Obviously bringing in Sean Kemp. I mean, there was some good stuff in there, but it could have been so much better. And it should have been probably, if not three, definitely two parts. You definitely tried to squeeze too much in there and you kind of missed the mark. Other one I've been checking out, and I don't know, why it's taking me so long to get to it. Oh gosh, it's the Amazon documentary on the Buccaneers. I guess I heard the Korean co-sell Steve Kim mentioned it on Coach JB's show last week. I said, okay, I gotta sit back and watch this. And I'm almost at the point where we get to the Brady years. It's a compelling watch. Okay, I really was kind of on the fence about it, but then again, I'm old school, so I remember how bad they were when they came into the league. And so getting all of that, and then obviously Doug Williams, who, will always be one of my heroes, Doug the Thug, and, right, and just all the personalities that were involved in that organization over the last, what has it been, like 50 years? Yeah, they came in 76 with the Seahawks. But yeah, I found that to be really interesting. The whole thing with Chucky and Tony Dungy, good stuff. And like I said, a lot of great players and personalities played with that organization over the last 5 decades. And I'm going to have to say, if you like your NFL history and good stories, definitely check out, I think it's Rise of the Flags. Anyhow, just say Bucks documentary if you've got Prime Video. Definitely something you might want to check out. Alrighty, folks, we've reached the end. This has always been fun. Thanks for putting up with me. Sorry for getting this content out later than I should, but it's the summertime and we're on summer hours and things like that, and we're working through a lot of things, more things to work through apparently. Got some more surprises coming as far as production goes. So yeah, like I said, give us about football season to have us all dialed in. Keep an eye out for new content from SJ of SJ Gets Down. It was a pleasure to have her on last week. We love her and always good to have her because she's such a great friend of the Foxhole and to people in our circles and stuff like that. She rocks, definitely. Other stuff with the scene definitely coming. Got some special guests for this. Gonna have Mr. Ford. He's cooking up a few things. So yeah, bear with us. It's about to be popping up in there. Okay. Till we see each other again, enjoy the adult bevs, some good food with the people that matter. Avoid the bracelets at all costs because ain't nobody got time for any of that bull jive. Stay safe. Definitely stay sane. Keep it real, keep it clean, keep it tight. We'll see you before you know it.